A struggling single mother faced eviction. But when Michelle Obama walked into the courtroom, what she said left the judge and everyone speechless. Lisa sat at her kitchen table, staring at the eviction notice in her trembling hands. Her two young children, Emma and Noah, played quietly in the next room, unaware of the storm about to upend their lives. Lisa worked tirelessly, balancing two part-time jobs as a waitress and a cleaner, but it was never enough. The rent hikes came fast, and her landlord, Mr. Drake, always seemed to find ways to squeeze more money from her, ignoring repairs and basic maintenance. This time was different. Mr. Drake had filed for her eviction, claiming she was months behind on rent. Lisa knew the truth. She'd paid every penny she could, even sacrificing meals for herself to keep a roof over her children's heads. But the landlord's greed knew no bounds. He wanted her out to bring in tenants willing to pay double for the rundown apartment. Lisa felt trapped. Legal help was out of reach, and the few friends she had were just as stretched thin as she was. Every solution seemed like a dead end. As tears welled up in her eyes, Emma toddled over, clutching a crayon drawing of their family. "It's us, Mommy," she said proudly. Lisa hugged her tightly, a silent promise in her heart. She would fight for her children, no matter what. Little did Lisa know, her story would soon reach the ears of someone who had the power and the heart to change everything. Michelle Obama was scrolling through her emails late one evening when a subject line caught her attention. "Single mother faces unfair eviction, needs help." The email was from a community advocacy group she had supported for years, detailing Lisa's plight. As Michelle read, her heart grew heavy. The story of a mother fighting to keep her family safe and together struck a chord deep within her. It reminded her of the struggles her own parents faced to provide stability and opportunity, even in tough times. The email included a photograph of Lisa with her children. Emma's bright smile and Noah's curious eyes stood in stark contrast to the despair written all over Lisa's face. The advocacy group explained how Lisa had been a victim of predatory practices by her landlord, Mr. Drake, who was known for exploiting low-income tenants. They ended the plea with one sentence that stayed with Michelle. "This family is days away from losing everything." Michelle sat back, the image of Lisa's family etched in her mind. She couldn't shake the thought of those children losing their home. As someone who had always championed justice and equal opportunity, she felt compelled to act. She picked up her phone and called her assistant. "Get me everything we know about this case," she said, her voice resolute. "And contact the advocacy group. I want to meet Lisa." By the next afternoon, Michelle sat face-to-face with Lisa in a small community center. Lisa was nervous but determined as she recounted her story. Michelle listened intently, her eyes never leaving Lisa's as she spoke. When Lisa finished, her voice breaking as she mentioned her fear of her children sleeping in a shelter, Michelle reached across the table and held her hand. "You're not alone in this," she said softly. "We're going to fight this together." That night, Michelle called a trusted lawyer who had worked with her on housing reform. She explained Lisa's case, emphasizing the urgency and the need for someone who wouldn't back down against a landlord like Mr. Drake. The lawyer agreed without hesitation. Michelle also began mapping out a plan to draw attention to housing injustices, knowing that this wasn't just about one family, it was about countless others facing the same struggle. As Michelle prepared to stand beside Lisa, she knew one thing. They were going to make sure justice prevailed, no matter how hard the fight. The days leading up to the court battle were filled with tension, hard work, and determination. Lisa's nerves were on edge, but Michelle Obama's steady presence gave her a sense of hope she hadn't felt in months. From the moment Michelle promised to help, she dove in with her characteristic focus and commitment. It wasn't just about winning the case, it was about exposing injustice and proving that ordinary people could stand up against those who exploited them. Michelle began by assembling a team. The lawyer she contacted, Rebecca Torres, was a fierce advocate for housing rights, with a reputation for taking on powerful landlords and winning. Rebecca wasted no time, meeting Lisa the same day to go over every detail of her situation. As Lisa explained how Mr. Drake had ignored her payments and fabricated debts to justify her eviction, Rebecca's expression hardened. "He's been getting away with this for far too long," she said firmly. "Not this time." The team quickly began gathering evidence. Lisa meticulously searched her records, finding receipts and bank statements that proved she had paid her rent. Michelle reached out to other tenants in Lisa's building, many of whom had similar stories of being overcharged or threatened with eviction. Some were hesitant to speak out, fearing retaliation, but Michelle's genuine empathy and calm reassurance won them over. "Your voices matter," she told them. "Together, we can make a difference." One of the tenants, an elderly woman named Mrs. Carter, shared a particularly damning account of how Mr. Drake had raised her rent repeatedly while refusing to fix basic utilities. "I've been living with a leaky ceiling for years," she said bitterly. "He knows I can't afford to move." With her testimony and others, Rebecca began building a solid case, exposing Mr. Drake's pattern of abuse. Meanwhile, Michelle worked behind the scenes to amplify Lisa's story. She reached out to journalists she trusted, ensuring that the case would be covered widely. By shining a light on the larger issue of housing exploitation, Michelle wanted to pressure the system to hold landlords like Mr. Drake accountable. Articles began appearing in local newspapers, highlighting Lisa's bravery and the unfair practices tenants faced. The community rallied behind her, with neighbors and supporters offering words of encouragement. Lisa, though initially overwhelmed by the attention, found strength she didn't know she had. "You're fighting for more than just your family," Michelle reminded her during one late-night prep session. "You're fighting for everyone who's been silenced or ignored." Those words became Lisa's mantra, giving her the courage to face what lay ahead. As the court date approached, the pressure intensified. Mr. Drake, sensing the mounting opposition, hired an aggressive lawyer known for intimidation tactics. Rebecca warned Lisa and Michelle that they'd likely try to discredit her character and paint her as irresponsible. "We're ready for them," Michelle assured Lisa. "They can't erase the truth." Michelle and Rebecca worked tirelessly to prepare Lisa for her testimony. They role-played potential questions the opposing lawyer might ask, helping Lisa stay calm and focused under pressure. When Lisa stumbled or doubted herself, Michelle was there to lift her up. "You've lived this," she said. "Just speak from your heart, and no one can take that away from you." Beyond the legal preparation, Michelle also made sure Lisa and her children had the support they needed. She arranged for a local child care center to watch Emma and Noah during the hearings and brought meals to their home so Lisa could concentrate on the case. "You're not in this alone," she reminded Lisa again and again. The night before the court date, Michelle visited Lisa at her modest apartment. The kids were already asleep, and the two women sat at the kitchen table, papers and notes spread out before them. Lisa's hands shook slightly as she held a copy of her prepared statement. "What if I mess up?" she asked softly. Michelle reached across the table, her gaze steady. "Lisa, you've already won in so many ways. You've stood up, spoken out, and shown incredible strength. Tomorrow is just the next step in this fight. No matter what happens, you're a hero to your kids. And to me." Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes as she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." As Michelle walked out into the cool night air, she took a deep breath. The fight wasn't over, but she knew they had done everything they could to prepare. Tomorrow, the world would see not only the strength of one mother's love, but the power of justice when good people stood together. The courtroom was packed, buzzing with anticipation. Journalists, neighbors, and curious onlookers filled the seats, eager to witness the high-profile case of a single mother standing up to a corrupt landlord, with Michelle Obama by her side. Lisa sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands clasped tightly, while Michelle and Rebecca flanked her, offering silent reassurance. Across the room, Mr. Drake lounged confidently, his expensive suit and smug smirk a clear display of his arrogance. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. "This court is now in session," the bailiff announced, and the trial began. Rebecca opened with a compelling statement, painting a vivid picture of Lisa's life, a hard-working single mother striving to provide for her children, unjustly targeted by a landlord who preyed on vulnerable tenants. "This case is about more than an eviction," she said firmly. "It's about fairness, decency, and holding those in power accountable." Mr. Drake's lawyer, a sharp-tongued man named Vincent Caldwell, wasted no time attacking Lisa's credibility. His opening remarks painted her as irresponsible, claiming she had neglected her rent payments and failed to maintain the apartment. "My client is a businessman," Caldwell said smugly. "He followed the law, and this eviction is simply a matter of enforcing the rules." The first witness called was Lisa. She took the stand, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. Rebecca guided her through her testimony, asking her to describe her struggles and how she had always prioritized paying rent, even at great personal cost. Lisa's voice trembled as she recounted skipping meals so her children could eat, only to receive an eviction notice claiming she hadn't paid. "I have proof," she said, holding up her bank statements and receipts. "Every cent I owed, I paid." Caldwell's cross-examination was brutal. He questioned Lisa's memory, suggesting she had misplaced payments or misunderstood the terms of her lease. But Lisa, armed with the evidence she and Rebecca had meticulously prepared, countered every claim with quiet strength. "I'm not confused," she said firmly. "I know what I paid, and I have the documents to prove it." Next, Rebecca called tenants from Lisa's building to testify. Mrs. Carter, the elderly woman Michelle had encouraged to speak out, described years of neglect and harassment by Mr. Drake. "He knows we're poor," she said, her voice breaking. "He thinks we won't fight back." Other tenants shared similar stories of illegal rent hikes and threats. Each testimony painted a damning picture of Mr. Drake's greed and disregard for the law. The courtroom began to shift. Murmurs of support for Lisa rippled through the audience. When it was Mr. Drake's turn to testify, his arrogance was palpable. He denied all accusations, claiming he had done nothing wrong, and accusing Lisa of trying to manipulate the system. "She's just looking for a handout," he sneered. Rebecca, however, was ready. She presented the court with documents exposing Mr. Drake's history of legal disputes and violations, including fines for unsafe living conditions and wrongful evictions. The evidence was irrefutable. Mr. Drake's smug expression faltered as Rebecca calmly dismantled his credibility piece by piece. Then, it was Michelle's turn. She stepped forward. The room hushed as she took the stand. Her presence was commanding, yet her tone was gentle and heartfelt. "I'm here today because I believe in justice," she began, her voice steady. "I've had the privilege of meeting Lisa and her children, and I've seen firsthand the sacrifices she makes to give them a better life. What's happening here is not just unfair, it's wrong." Michelle spoke passionately about the broader issue of housing inequality, tying Lisa's struggle to the experiences of countless families across the country. She emphasized the importance of holding people like Mr. Drake accountable, not just for Lisa's sake, but for the future of communities like hers. Her words resonated deeply, bringing some in the audience to tears. As Michelle finished her testimony, the judge leaned forward, clearly moved. "Mrs. Obama," he said, "your commitment to justice is inspiring. Thank you for sharing your perspective." The final moments of the trial were tense. Caldwell made a last-ditch effort to sway the judge, arguing that Mr. Drake's actions were within legal bounds and that Lisa was simply unfortunate. But his words rang hollow in light of the overwhelming evidence and heartfelt testimonies. The judge took a long pause before delivering his verdict. "After reviewing the evidence and hearing the testimonies," he began, "it is clear that Mr. Drake has engaged in unethical and unlawful practices. The eviction notice is hereby dismissed, and Mr. Drake is ordered to pay damages to Ms. Lisa Taylor for the undue stress and hardship caused." The courtroom erupted in applause. Lisa buried her face in her hands, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. Michelle leaned over and whispered, "You did it. You stood your ground." But the judge wasn't finished. He looked directly at Mr. Drake. "Furthermore, I am referring this case to the Housing Authority for further investigation into your business practices. This court will not tolerate exploitation. Mr. Drake's face turned pale as the weight of the ruling sank in. Meanwhile, Lisa's neighbors and supporters cheered, their faith in justice restored. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered, waiting for the verdict. When Lisa, Michelle, and Rebecca emerged, they were met with cheers and applause. Journalists swarmed them, but Michelle raised her hand, quieting the crowd. "Today justice was served," she said, her voice carrying strength and warmth. "This is proof that when we stand together, we can overcome even the toughest challenges. Lisa's courage is an inspiration to us all." Lisa held her children close as tears streamed down her face. "Thank you," she whispered to Michelle. "I couldn't have done this without you." Michelle smiled, placing a hand on Lisa's shoulder. "You had the strength all along. You just needed someone to believe in you." As they walked away from the courthouse, Lisa knew her life had changed forever. Not just because of the verdict, but because someone had cared enough to fight for her. And for everyone watching, it was a powerful reminder of the difference one person's kindness and determination could make. The courtroom victory marked a new beginning for Lisa, but the emotional weight of the journey lingered. As the crowd dispersed, Lisa stepped outside with Emma and Noah clinging to her. They had won, but the reality of everything they had endured hit her all at once. Tears streamed down her face. Not from sadness, but from an overwhelming mix of relief, gratitude, and exhaustion. Michelle stood beside her, her hand resting gently on Lisa's shoulder. "You were incredible in there," she said warmly. "Your courage made this happen." Lisa wiped her tears and nodded, her voice trembling. "I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me when no one else did." The reporters who had gathered outside buzzed with questions, eager to capture Lisa's reaction. But Michelle stepped in, shielding her from the chaos. "This is Lisa's moment," she told the cameras firmly. "Let her have it in peace." Later that evening, Lisa sat with her children in their small apartment, surrounded by neighbors who had come to celebrate. The tension that had once filled the air was replaced with laughter and hope. Mrs. Carter, who had testified during the trial, raised her glass of lemonade. "To Lisa," she said, her voice filled with pride. "You didn't just win for yourself, you won for all of us." Amid the celebration, Michelle quietly pulled Lisa aside. "This isn't the end of the road," she said gently. "You've proven you can fight for what's right, and now it's time to build something better." Lisa hesitated, unsure what Michelle meant. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I've made a few calls," Michelle said with a knowing smile. "I've arranged for you to meet with a local housing organization. They'll help you find a new place, somewhere safe, where your kids can thrive. And if you're interested, they're also hiring. You'd be amazing working with them, helping families like yours." Lisa's eyes widened in disbelief. "You did all that?" "Why?" Michelle's smile softened. "Because someone once believed in me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn to do the same for you." The following week, Lisa met with the organization Michelle had mentioned. True to her word, they not only helped Lisa find a new apartment in a better neighborhood, but also offered her a job as a community advocate. It wasn't just a paycheck. It was a chance to give back and make a difference. Word of the court victory spread quickly, sparking conversations about housing reform. Inspired by the attention, Michelle used her platform to push for stronger tenant protections. "This case was about more than one family," she said during a public speech. "It's about ensuring that every family has the right to live with dignity and security." For Lisa, life began to take on a new sense of purpose. She poured herself into her work, becoming a voice for those who felt unheard. Her children thrived in their new home, their laughter filling the rooms with warmth and light. Months later, Lisa received a handwritten note from Michelle. It read, "Never forget how far you've come. The world needs more people like you. Keep shining." Lisa framed the note, placing it on her desk as a daily reminder of her journey. Looking back, Lisa realized that the battle in the courtroom had been about more than just saving her home. It had been a turning point. a moment that reminded her of her own strength and the power of standing together. And for everyone who had witnessed her story, it was proof that justice, when fueled by compassion and determination, could change lives. Months had passed since the courtroom victory, but the memory of that day remained vivid in Lisa's heart. She stood in her cozy new apartment, watching Emma and Noah play in the bright living room. Their laughter echoed through the space, a stark contrast to the fear and uncertainty that had once consumed their lives. Lisa glanced at the framed note from Michelle Obama on her desk, her eyes lingering on the words, "Keep shining." Those two simple words carried so much weight. They reminded Lisa of her strength, her resilience, and the kindness of a woman who had believed in her when she needed it the most. Later that evening, Lisa stood before a small crowd at a local community event. She had been invited to speak about her journey and the importance of standing up for justice. With a deep breath, she began, "A few months ago, I was lost. I didn't know where to turn, and I felt invisible. But someone saw me. Someone believed in me, and that changed everything." The audience listened intently as Lisa spoke, her voice steady and full of conviction. "This isn't just my story. It's a story about how we can all make a difference when we stand together." As the crowd applauded, Lisa felt a wave of pride and hope. Her life had transformed, and now she was determined to pay it forward. And somewhere, Michelle Obama, watching from afar, smiled, knowing her belief in Lisa had sparked a brighter future for many. Thank you for watching this incredible story of courage and kindness. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. And hey, check out the videos appearing on your screen. They're full of heartwarming moments you won't want to miss. See you in the next one.